Like working is worrying. That's one thing that I really try not to do. Like, don't worry on Sabbath. Like, I know we're never supposed to worry according to Jesus, but at least on Sabbath, I'm like, okay, no anxiety allowed. We'll come back to that tomorrow. And sometimes you make a list. I mean, some people, before they say the Sabbath prayer, or like, some people light candles. We're actually going to get into that, but they'll write down, and we do this sometimes, what things am I giving to God for 24 hours? Oh, this work situation, my insecurity about our money right now.
Dave, that is so good. Let's talk about Sabbath for a few minutes here.
Okay.
You have mentioned it a number of times. We had a Sabbath dinner with you and your family. We had a casual conversation with some people the other day about Sabbath. Tell me what Sabbath means, and practically, what are you doing on a Sabbath?
Sabbath has been absolutely transformative for my life. And in our modern world, in our busy world, like for me, I would just work all the time, and I was getting burnt out and angry at the world. And quite frankly, practicing Sabbath really helped me overcome my sin issues and my addiction issues. Because if you dedicate an hour, if you dedicate a 24-hour period a week to just connecting with God, you have to face your shadow side. Because I was just trying to be awesome, work super hard, accomplish things. And that's not the case for everybody, but workaholism and accomplishment to me were like in the name of God, and I say that I don't want to be too hard on myself. Like everything I was doing, I was trying to build the kingdom. I mean, what we did with Acquire the Fire, we're trying to build the kingdom. And so I think there was a lot of good motives in there. But for me, it was also mixed with wanting to look cool to people, wanting to be famous, wanting to be affirmed that I'm a good person from externally versus internally or from God. And so when you're sat there on Sabbath and you're just doing nothing, you feel like, particularly if you're a workaholic like me, if you find your value from what you do.
Right. I'm not doing something.
I'm not doing it.
I'm lying on the couch.
Who am I when I'm not accomplishing?
What a waste of time.
Oh, I'm spending time with God. Well, that doesn't matter. What matters is me kicking butt and accomplishing things. Oh, like you see it on Sabbath. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't know how to rest. I didn't know how to enjoy life. I didn't know I liked things. And so we go to the Chicago Botanic Garden a lot. I love it. I go there and it feels super sacred, and I just feel like connected, and I'm like, oh, I feel like a human again. It's really kind of brought me back. I don't think that I would have had the sustainability that I've had to stay in the music industry for, if you count Acquire the Fire, like, 20 years. And I don't feel angry. I don't feel burnt out. I feel a little wiser, and I'm probably a little more tired, but I don't feel angry.
Right.
I feel like a kid most of the time, like a tired, like chillax kid.
Oh, older kid.
But do you know what I mean? There's like this naivete where I want to create music and I enjoy life. I want to see plants. I want to see birds. I mean, we just had a baby, We didn't have a kid for like 19 years of marriage. And then, through this process of Sabbath, through this process of recovery, through this process of refocusing on who God wants me to be and what we're doing, like it's led to literal new life in our family.
Right. Okay. So practically, you just mentioned the botanical gardens.
Yes.
What, walk me through Sabbath.
Okay. So they say, so feasting, celebrating life, whatever that. So for me, that could be going to the Botanic Garden. Yeah. Feasting, celebrating life, dancing, making love if you're married, obviously. Sleeping, the Sabbath naps they talk about. Right. Yeah, sleep, rest, anything that fills your heart with joy and gratitude. I mean, listening to teaching, meditating, like just walking and praying. Like we'll go for a walk, get coffee with a friend. And then also it's the things that you don't do. So for me, I don't write songs on Sabbath. I don't check my email on Sabbath. I don't think about work. I mean, like...
So you have to discipline yourself to do that. So if a thought...
100%.
I got to finish this song for this deadline. What happens in your mind?
Not today. It's like Christmas. Well, I mean, some people work on Christmas, but the majority of people are able to set Christmas aside. I've seen people working on their phone through Christmas dinner.
Right. But you take Christmas off and you're like, I'll get to the stuff at the office.
For the most people, your anniversary, Christmas, Thanksgiving, your favorite football game, like you generally can put your phone down and focus for that.
Yeah. I think John Mark Comer says it that, God took the seventh day off, not because there was nothing else to do. There were still more things to do. And for all of us, it's the same thing. Like, you're not going to accomplish everything in your life by Saturday and then take your Sabbath on Sunday or whatever day you choose to. There's always going to be a list of things to do. And that isn't the point. You don't take Sabbath because you're done everything. You take Sabbath because God has made us to need a time of rest in the busyness of life, not because we've accomplished and checked off everything on our to-do list.
Which is such an opportunity for growth / freak out moment. But it helps me because it's a rhythm. It happens at the same time every week. So at first...
Doesn't sneak up on you. You know what's going to happen.
Yes. Well, it does sneak up on me still, but that rhythm of accepting that I can't get everything done. Because before, and this I think was tied into my addiction, was I just wasn't accepting life. I wasn't accepting my limitations. I wasn't accepting that I couldn't do everything. I was like, I am going to do everything, dang it. And, to your point earlier, that has been to somewhat beneficial in my life because you're like, oh, David, the keyboard player, now you're a singer, now you're a songwriter. And now, you go from just being in a band to like, now you're a solo artist and producing and making a video record. Like, there is a drive in me that has been beneficial of like, I will figure this out. You can't stop me. But the downside of that is that I'm obsessive about things and that I won't let things go and that I think that I'm God and having to, it's almost like dying once a week.
Right.
It's like when you pass out of this world, your to-do list is over, man. Like, and so it's making peace with that every week that I'm not God and that I'm not holding this whole thing up. Like Jesus taught us to pray, give us this day our daily bread. And the American male is like, or Canadian, I think men.
Western world or whatever.
Yes, exactly. I like that. I think we think, well, I got to go earn my daily bread. And I'm not saying don't work hard. I work hard. But at some point you have to accept, do you make the blueberries grow? Did you deliver them?
Did you make the child grow?
Right. So you go.
So much is out of our hands.
You go to a restaurant and they bring food. I mean, you don't control if there's a famine in the world or if the friggin' whomever drops a bomb on whomever. We don't control things. And so Sabbath is a recognition where you take your hands off. And not that sending emails and texts and that's not keeping the world together. But when you really step back and say, oh, God makes the blueberries grow. God brings forth bread from the earth, as the Sabbath prayer goes. You start to let go and offer that to-do list of undone stuff. There's a quote from a Sabbath book. I can't remember. It was called 24/6. The book is called. And he said, he said, the lie of the 24/7 world is that you can accomplish everything. Practicing Sabbath puts God back into the equation and leaves some of the figuring out to him. It's like, I don't know what to do about this thing. I'm going to work harder. No, I don't. And
so it takes faith.
It takes faith to where you say, I don't have to figure everything out. I'm actually going to, I'm going to take a day and let God have a go at figuring things. And what's crazy is
how nice of you.
Yes. I'm going to let him. What's crazy is how many things get resolved when you just do nothing. And again, I'm not advocating laziness, but like if you let people know, okay, this is the day I don't answer my messages. You get a message in the morning, oh, there's a problem. You get another message halfway through the day, oh, never mind, I figured it out. And it's like that got solved without me.
Right.
Oh, I can trust God. Yes, you can trust God. Leave some of the figuring out to him. That's what he wants from us, is put God back into this equation.
Okay, so walk me through Sabbath. I think you do Saturday. So you start Friday night. Go from Friday night to Saturday night. What's happening?
Friday night, we feast. We say the Sabbath prayer.
What's the Sabbath prayer?
The whole thing?
Well, I don't know. Do you know it?
I just stole the one from The Chosen. They said, like,
all right.
I'm not going to say the whole thing.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a Sabbath prayer.
Yes.
And you do it intentionally.
Some people just say a psalm. Some people sing like the Jewish people will have a song that they sing. But doing something that's the same every weekend for us, it's the Sabbath prayer, which we found on The Chosen. We just went and copied it, and we use that. We love it. And then I have a glass of wine. I toast. I celebrate life. And that might not be your thing, but that's traditionally what Jewish people did, and to celebrate as Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. So then we feast. We say our highlight of the week. So it's very much leaning into gratitude as well. Like this idea that like when God made the world, he saw that it was good. And that came back to what you were saying earlier about stopping and recognizing your accomplishments. So if you can look back at the last week and say, oh, okay, even though it feels like a blur, actually, no, this thing happened and this thing happened. You start to go through your week and think about the good things.
I did stuff.
Wow, there's a lot to be grateful for this week, instead of this sort of feeling like it's never enough. So you're going around the table saying, this is what I loved about this week. This is what I'm grateful about this week. You're celebrating life with your friends and family. And then, either sometimes we'll go to bed early, or sometimes we'll do, married people stuff. And then you get up. We normally go get brunch somewhere, go for a walk in a park.
Do you intentionally not make food? Like, is that a task or a work that you don't want to do?
Well, it's different for different people.
You go get brunch, you said, so.
A lot of times we will.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people find that restful or
yes. Yes. We're still working out the details of it.
Yeah. All right, so you go get brunch.
But a lot of times we'll go get brunch. Some people just make a big breakfast at home, which is cool too. Either way, the Bible just says don't work. And so there's a lot of fluidity to what not working
in between these boundaries.
Yes, so some people could run, and other people say running, that's work.
Right.
But some people think reading, like I hate reading. Some people love it. Like, okay, I'm going to read a novel. Oh, that sounds like work. So there is a lot of fluidity to what's working and what's not. But for me, like working is worrying. That's one thing that I really try not to do. Like, don't worry on Sabbath. Like, I know we're never supposed to worry according to Jesus, but at least on Sabbath, I'm like, okay, no anxiety allowed. We'll come back to that tomorrow. And sometimes you make a list. Some people, before they say the Sabbath prayer, or like, some people light candles. We're actually going to get into that, but they'll write down, and we do this sometimes, what things am I giving to God for 24 hours? Oh, this work situation, my insecurity about our money right now.
Dave, that is so good.
You're
not writing down a to-do list. That's not what you're writing down.
You're writing down what you're letting go of for 24 hours and what you're really surrendering to God. I still don't, after working all week, I still don't know what to do about this thing, but I'm going to set it aside and give it to God. And then you say the prayer and light the candles and pour the wine and say the blessing and say what you're grateful for. It kind of helps with the transition, particularly if it's because you don't want to crash into Sabbath. Like,
sure.
You have to sort of detox. And
it sounds so good.
There's this moment usually where you sort of come alive again, where whether you're sitting on your couch or you're, for me, like looking at a flower or something, just having coffee in the park on a walk, where you sort of think, okay, life is good. Like you sort of, it's like you come back alive again. It's normally at some point on a Saturday morning.
After you're in it a few hours. You're halfway.
Yes.
You've been in it for 12 hours.
Well, they say it takes, on a scientific level, they say it takes a full 24 hours for, oh, geez, I'm not going to be able to think of it now. The stress,
like to turn
the
off.
Stress hormone to leave your body. What is it called?
Cortisol. No.
Cortisol.
Is that it?
Yep. It takes, So if you get triggered or if you're in fight or flight or whatever, it actually takes 24 hours for cortisol to fully flush from your body. So that's another argument for why it should be a full day. Some people, okay, I can only do 4 hours of Sabbath.
I was going to ask you that because I've heard people talk about Sabbath moments. Like, I don't do a whole day, but I'll turn my phone
Well, it's
off.
better than nothing, right?
Sure.
And again, I mean, here's where it gets into what we were talking about earlier about church getting weird. Like, this is not some new gospel where you don't belong to Jesus if you don't do Sabbath.
Right.
You know what? Because Sabbath is basically the only 10 of the 10 commandments that Christians don't honor. So they honor all of the other.
Do not kill. Very important.
It's the fourth commandment, and it's the only one that Christians really don't honor right now since the 1950s. I mean, it got weird in Christianity because it got very legalistic instead of what Jesus said. Hey, this was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And I think people hear that, and the translation is something like, oh, well, we don't need it then because Jesus said that. But he still said it was made for man. Like, God made Sabbath. Here's Jesus' take on it. God made the Sabbath for you.
Right.
That's what Jesus said about it. And somehow Christianity has turned that into,
I don't need that.
That means we don't have to do this. What Jesus said is, I made this for you.
It's like a gift.
Don't get legalistic about it. That was not man. I didn't have the Sabbath, then I made man for that. It doesn't change it that Sabbath was still made for man. I'm over-explaining my point. But
you've made your point.
It's a good point.
Brunch Saturday afternoon, you're walking around the garden, going for a walk, reading a book.
Yes, after that, probably a nap, sleep, read a book. I might play the piano, not
fiddle around for fun,
not to try to write a hit song that's going to make me a lot of money and make me super famous, but just to enjoy music if you can. Or I'll meditate. I'll sit in the sun. Sometimes I just sit in the sun, sit in the sunlight, have a cup of tea. With a kid now, it's different, there's lots of new integrations and that, and but it's still really good and it's still sweet. And and that's one of the big arguments. People say I can't do it because I have a young child or I have a career. And the way that I view that is something to the effect of, like, say you cook a nice dinner and your kid is there or whatever, and one of you is having to look over after the kid, and you're making a nice dinner, and you're talking about Christmas with the in-laws, and you're on the phone with your boss, and you're talking with your wife about the grocery budget. Or you cut out the things you can. So you could have a nice dinner and we're going to turn our phone off. Yes, our kid is still screaming. Okay, I accept that. But we're not talking about the in-laws. We're not talking about Christmas. We're not talking about the budget. I'm letting go of my insecurities. I'm letting go of my demands on you. And I'm thank you, God, for this week. I'm celebrating this week. I'm letting go of things. And also we have kids.
Yeah.
But there's a whole heck of a lot of difference between those two things. Put on some nice music, versus the TV on in the background.
Yeah.
Those are two vastly different things. Now,
that's good.
Is it this blissful, complete, serene moment? No, I have kids. But even within that, now they can see that there's a difference between the normal night and Sabbath night.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, like it, share, review, do all the things you're supposed to do. We really appreciate it. We want to keep making great content and learning from our mistakes, getting wisdom. Thanks so much. See you next time.